A band of trappers once survived by eating their own dogs. They ventured across a frontier with nothing but grit. They perished seeking water in a land devoid of it. One was later discovered face down in a dry depression, an arrow in his back. It makes you ponder the cost in human life that shaped the map you recognize. Who truly pioneered the West? Was it soldiers, settlers, or spectral figures? And why are those who arrived first the least remembered? Forget conventional notions of pioneers. These trappers were solitary figures, forging paths no one followed because survival seemed impossible. Yet they proved to be among the hardiest individuals who ever lived, and their story is our focus today. 2 centuries ago, the American West remained untamed. Vast plains teemed with buffalo and antelope. Elk and deer quenched their thirst at the rivers. High in the mountains, wild sheep traversed rocky terrain with silent agility. White goats clung to sheer cliffs. Bears hunted deep within the forests. Beavers built dams across the streams. Occasionally, small groups of native peoples moved quietly through the landscape, ever vigilant. Then came the white man, driven by a different hunger for fur. Beavers began to vanish, pushing trappers ever farther. They ventured upstream into uncharted valleys. They crossed parched, cracked deserts. Their possessions were few: rifles, steel traps, and little else. They endured freezing temperatures, starvation, and drowning. Some were killed, some took lives. Still, they pressed on. They were rugged men, hands calloused, boots worn. They were men of few words and deep distrust, but they knew the land intimately, like the back of their scarred hands. They arrived just after the native tribes, long before the military and permanent settlers. Lewis and Clark encountered some during their renowned expedition, but the trappers were already deep in the wilderness. Much of their accumulated knowledge of rivers, passes, trails, and weather died with them. Fragments survived in journals, military records, and aged maps, names etched into wood, rivers christened after forgotten men. Their trapping wasn't solely for profit. It was something more profound, ancient, ingrained. They were the vanguards. Settlers followed, then towns, then commerce. The fur trade became a major enterprise. It began in the north with figures like Risen and Grossares, leading to the establishment of the Hudson's Bay Company. Astor amassed a fortune from it in the United States. But today's narrative isn't about the business. It's about the individual, the trapper, the mountain man, who he was, how he existed. What was the price? They hailed from diverse backgrounds. Wild, daring Frenchmen from the northeast, known as coureurs de bois. Spaniards from the south, though their foothold in that part of the New World was never firm. Scots and English descended from Canada. Men like Henry, Thompson, Mackenzie, who marched west bearing flags and corporate directives. Speaking of Henry, Mackenzie, and other icons, don't miss our special 12-hour episode featuring 11 legendary mountain men. Even Russians engaged in fur trade on the distant coast in the 1700s. By the century's end, Boston merchants had also appeared. Then came the Americans in the early 1800s, taking dominance. St. Louis became the trade's epicenter. Following the Louisiana Purchase, trapping boomed, and the trade remained robust for 4 decades. A comprehensive account can be found in Captain H.M. Chittenden's book. It's a slow, thorough read, rich with detail. Copies are scarce, but those familiar with it hold it in high regard. Yet, that's not the focus of this episode. This is about the man in the frigid wild, setting traps by hand, sleeping with one eye open, perpetually moving. He left behind little, just a path, a name, a fragmented story, and the land still bearing the faint imprint of his passage. The American fur trapper lived by a single code. Keep moving, no pursuit of glory, no pause for rest. If it cost him his life, or someone else's, so be it. That's how the wilderness was conquered. Not through speeches, certainly not through armies, but through sheer determination and sacrifice. He feared nothing and answered to no one. He held sway over his wild territory like an uncrowned king. If rivals obstructed him, he broke them, cheated them, fought them. He drank heavily, lived intensely, and died even harder. And yet, amidst the grime and bloodshed, something fierce and resilient defined him. He embodied both the worst and the best of human nature when pushed to the brink. Wolves and Napoleon had armies behind them. They redrew maps through conflict. But the fur trader? He ventured out alone, sometimes in pairs, never in larger groups. They had no support, no orders to follow. Their only resources were a rifle, a blade, and a few traps. And still, they claimed a continent. They carved out a new existence, leaving behind a people forged by struggle. Consider John Colter. Manuel Lisa found him emerging from the wilderness over a century ago, carrying only his pack and gun. His departure went unnoticed, his return uncelebrated. And if you haven't yet, check out our special 8-hour episode on John Colter. Then there was Williams from Arkansas, who navigated rivers silently at night, hiding by day. He slipped past danger, his paddles muffled with cloth. He slept concealed among branches in the current's embrace, ready to cut his line and disappear downstream if trouble approached. Men crossed the Cimarron with pack horses, choking on dust and heat. Some, like Becknell's group, were forced to kill and consume their own dogs. Others perished digging for water in the sand that never materialized. Rocky Mountain Smith met such a fate, an arrow in his back, body slumped over a shallow hole. Yet those who reached destinations like Pierre's Hole carried pelts on their backs. They ascended from canyons using knives jammed into the rock. The river below too turbulent for boats, the cliffs too sheer for horses. And when the challenges became too great to face alone, they united, following leaders like Astor in the west or Mackenzie in the north. Together, they traversed frozen seas. They navigated icy waters under the midnight sun with little fuss. No more remarkable to them than catching a train is to us. Similarly, back in 1787, when the world was still taking shape on maps, John Ledyard, a restless soul from Connecticut, wasted no time. He departed London, crossed Europe, and journeyed deep into Russia. His ambition was to reach Kamchatka, then Alaska, and ultimately traverse North America on foot. He got as far as Yakutsk before Russian authorities, wary of his purpose, arrested him and sent him back to Poland. Then there was Farnham, a different route but the same drive. He tackled the Oregon Trail, reached California, and even visited the Sandwich Islands. No cross-Asian trek, but he saw plenty of untamed territory. Farnham is also featured in that 12-hour episode I mentioned, so if his story interests you, be sure to check that out after this one. But yes, the American fur trader followed a single principle: relentless forward movement. Just keep going, regardless of the cost. Even if someone died. Even if he did. And that's how the wilderness was claimed. One step at a time. Part 2. The Trapper. Now examine a map. Choose any point between the Gulf and Hudson Bay, the Great Lakes, and the Rockies. Then ask yourself, who arrived there first? The answer is consistently the same: the French trapper. In the 1600s, impoverished and restive English nobles turned to raiding. Spanish aristocrats pursued gold, resorting to piracy. But young Frenchmen, they gravitated to the fur trade. They disdained farming, finding it too slow, too predictable. They craved liberty, quick riches, a grand life. And the wild offered all of it. Entry required little. No land or titles were necessary, just courage. Enough courage to paddle deep into the unknown. City merchants held the capital and were eager to equip canoes with provisions, tools, and trade goods. For what would be about $168,000 in today's currency, they could dispatch 4 men for 2 years. The potential returns were immense, easily 8 times the investment. Merchants took their share. The remainder went to those who survived. If a trapper returned alive, he could walk away with the modern equivalent of nearly $100,000 for 2 years of arduous, perilous work. Some earned even more. As the French pushed up the Missouri from Louisiana or moved west from Michilimackinac, the stakes escalated. 2 partners once returned from an 18-month expedition through the vast hunting grounds near Lake Superior and the upper Missouri, with furs valued at today's equivalent of $6.7 million. To those French nobles, the wilderness was a treasure ship awaiting plunder. France attempted to curb this. They tried to keep men on farms, enacting laws. No trade without a license. Breaking these rules incurred severe penalties, steep fines, hard labor, sometimes death. It made no difference. The trappers simply stayed out longer, vanishing into the wild, earning enough to buy their way out of trouble, or simply never coming back. And thus, they became coureurs des bois, runners of the woods, leaders of independent bands, beholden to no one. Some ruled the forests like potentates, part wild, part refined, a singular blend, part old world, part new, and they never looked back. East of the Mississippi, the French trapper maintained his distance, distrusting English settlers and the Iroquois alike. North of the St. Lawrence, the situation was worse. The French governor wielded legal authority and could confiscate furs if the proper papers were not in order. But to the west, between St. Louis and the Mackenzie River, lay a lawless expanse. No flags, no kings. A cold, open domain abundant with game. The finest pelts originated there. So that is where the trapper went. There were 4 main routes to reach it. Sailing from Quebec to the mouth of the Mississippi, then heading upstream by dugout or pirogue. This required capital few possessed. Crossing overland from Detroit to the Illinois or Ohio rivers, constructing a raft, and floating down to the Mississippi. From there, transferring to a canoe and heading north. Starting from Michilimackinac, a major rendezvous point for hunters, then proceeding to Green Bay, paddling up the Fox River, portaging to the Wisconsin, and drifting down to the Mississippi, taking the Ottawa River, passing through the Sault, then across Lake Superior and westward. No matter the route, each journey was invariably upstream, always heading north. They called that wild territory Pays d'en Haut, the upper country. It stretched between the Missouri and the Mackenzie, completely untamed. As previously mentioned, the French trapper differed from others. Even when working for former adversaries, transporting goods, running furs, he retained his dignity. He still pursued la gloire, glory, still clung to pride. He lived hard and died harder. One day he might feast, the next, nothing. He gambled away his possessions, laughed when the snow closed in, took risks as if they were games. Then the boat plunged into the whitewater. So part 3, the journey. When the water narrowed and accelerated, everyone sensed it. Silence fell. The bowman would rise, eyes fixed forward, pole in hand. The river's roar intensified. The banks became a blur. The trapper's canoe would lurch, not gliding, but leaping, crashing, bouncing off the water's force. Beneath them, it was pure motion, lively and loud. The bow of the boat would lift, riding the waves. A rock would emerge from the stream. The bowman would react swiftly, one quick thrust of the pole. Then paddles moved in unison, fast. The canoe would surge past the danger. Another push, another sweep. Just like that, they were clear. But the river transforms. It gathers itself like a predator poised to strike. The sound builds, no longer just water, but raw power. Then it hits. A sharp, deep impact. The paddlers lean back all at once, instinctively, without shouting or warning. The canoe rises, spray flashes white. It lifts and drops in the same instant. Then, they are flying down the chute over the cascade. No one speaks. Nothing out of the ordinary. They are simply running the rapids, and the men are drenched. Perhaps someone laughs, maybe Jean or Baptiste, or the one with the fancy sash, because his moccasins are wet now, and he dislikes that intensely. They settle back in. One man pauses to scoop water with his hat. Then they press on, always forward. On the return journey, however, when the canoes are heavily laden, it's different. Then they must stop. If the water is deep enough to carry the full weight, they wait. One man remains in the canoe to guide it. The rest haul the canoe upstream with ropes, tracking. If the rapids are severe, they take no chances. Each man grabs his load, straps it to his back, the cords biting into his forehead. They walk along the shore. A lengthy portage is measured in pipes smoked, not miles. One smoke for a short one, two, maybe three for a difficult stretch. They do not complain, even in the heat. That portage near Chaudière Falls? 9 miles. They completed it without a word. Winter, though. Winter is an entirely different matter. The voyageur becomes a runner of the woods. 6 months of snow. White silence stretching endlessly. The trees are burdened with it, the sky too. Part 4. The Wilderness. Out in that wild expanse, 3 adversaries constantly challenged the trapper. The first was the wolf pack, ruthless, swift, and perpetually hungry. The trapper had a fragile understanding of how to survive them. The second was the hostile native, often incited by competing traders. The French trapper also understood this threat. He spoke their tongue, shared their fireside, and lived among them more closely than most. This helped him, not always, but enough to cling to life. But the third enemy was the most formidable, more malicious, cunning, and relentless. It didn't walk on 2 legs, and no name was uttered with more venom than this one. The wolverine, the carcajou. A thieving creature with teeth like a bear and boundless audacity. The trapper would encounter it soon enough, perhaps the day after his first deer kill. With snow covering everything, the scent of blood hung in the air. Before long, small tracks would appear, prints like a child's hand. Otter? Mink? Fisher? Possibly, but the trapper knew better. It could be far worse. He'd set traps, small, hidden beneath the snow, leaving no human trace. He'd drag a deer hide across the snow to mask his scent, wiping everything down with castoreum or pomatum. Sometimes he'd handle the traps with hide instead of bare hands. Fishers travel in pairs, so he'd ring the carcass with traps. The next morning, chaos. Most of the deer was gone. All sorts of animals had come to feed, but none were caught. One trap was sprung and mangled, another tossed into a hollow, useless. A third held a fisher, but the creature was torn to shreds, teeth marks everywhere. One trap was flipped from behind, as if mocked. And some traps simply vanished. Even the predators of the forest don't devour each other when there's food aplenty. But this was different. The trapper swore under his breath. That damnable wolverine. So he resorted to cunning. He concealed strychnine in the meat, using a steel rod to insert it, grain by grain. The next day, futile. The meat was ripped apart, poisoned and wasted, bones scattered like fallen leaves. He attempted a deadfall trap, building it sturdy and heavy. He returned later, demolished, smashed from behind, completely plundered. Nothing remained. That is the wolverine. It doesn't kill out of hunger or steal from necessity. It does it because it possesses the capability. The trapper recognized the signs. The carcass was picked clean. It happened at night, revealing something. Wolverines hunt in darkness. The traps were circled, not approached directly. Another clue. The wolverine never crosses a man's trail. It bypasses it, always wary. The poisoned meat was untouched. It didn't understand poison, but it wouldn't take the risk. Traps were flipped open. No other animal dares such a thing. It's too perilous. But the wolverine, curious, always watching, always interfering. Its tracks don't fan out like a fox's. They loop back tightly, straight to cover. The wolverine isn't just one thing. It's audacious, suspicious, avaricious, intelligent, a mischief maker, a thief, a killer, yet also a scavenger. It prevents the north from decaying, finishing what is broken or dying. It shows no mercy and makes no pretense of doing so. Its sense of smell is as acute as a fox's. Its teeth, long, crooked, designed for tearing. Its eyes, deep, green, cold, sharp as a blade. They don't gaze at you like a dog would. They observe as if they understand. It raids everything: muskrat lodges, gopher tunnels, caves hidden in brush. It pilfers traps, caches, graves, even human dwellings. Native or settler, it makes no distinction. An old, weary trapper once spat the truth. I don't mind being bested by a wolf. Don't mind being outsmarted by a man. But a beast the size of a pig, with a fox's nose, a bear's claws, and fur like a porcupine's spine. That was a genuine affront. It grated on his nerves. It won't cross your path, but it will trail behind, silently waiting. Because it knows what you know. It knows there's food in your traps while you rest, and food in your cabin while you're checking your lines. But even the wolverine has two vulnerabilities. It desires too much, and it always craves knowledge. That's the leverage. There's a tale from James Bay, Moose Factory. A native hunter and his wife nearly starved because the wolverine destroyed their traps night after night. Day after day, they had nothing to eat. They had to travel 100 miles to escape it. "Bad devil," they declared. "Oh, he is a bad devil." The trapper understands his adversary. The creature is intelligent, vicious. It knows how to defeat steel and bait, so he changes the rules. He waits for snow, fresh snow to conceal his scent and tracks. Then he selects a location the wolverine frequents. There, he places meat, something potent, rotten fish, old bacon. He then encircles the bait with his sturdiest traps, chaining them to poles, stakes, even small trees. Now he is ready. Night falls, and he waits. The next morning, the bait is gone. No tracks. The snow looks undisturbed. But he knows better. One stake is missing, dragged away. That is the sign. He searches, slowly, meticulously. A trap is missing, but a wolverine was caught. It wasn't held by the missing trap. It pulled with such force it uprooted the young tree. It didn't gnaw off its own leg like a fox. No. This creature seized the trap in its teeth and hobbled away on 3 legs. It didn't seek refuge in the woods. That would be too easy to track. It fled to the river, the flat ice offering no trail, high banks concealing it from wind and sight. The trapper follows, slow and careful. Then he finds it. The trap, mangled, the spring pried open. The carcajou had stopped, assessed the situation, and figured out how to free itself. Still alive. Still out there. And if this kind of thing fascinates you, there's an episode on how frontiersmen hunted, and another on the traps they used. Worth checking out after this one. But for now, the weary trapper plots his final stratagem, the gun. He buries it under brush, fully loaded. Across from the barrel, he places bait, tying it to the trigger. Just a tug, and it fires. Simple, decisive. Most animals would flee after one scare and never return. Not the wolverine. It doesn't scare. It becomes bolder. Night after night it comes, and the trapper knows. Until he kills it, his traps will remain empty. He will starve. He has likely attempted this before, more than once. The cord chewed through, the bait gone, no shot fired. The carcajou is not easily fooled, but hunger and curiosity draw it in. And one day, close will be close enough. So the man waits, watches. He has learned its route. The same trees, the same hour every night. Then he sets his final trick. He finds meat, precisely the right weight, heavy enough to keep the trigger taut, but not enough to fire it. He strings the gun up in a thick evergreen, hidden. The meat dangles just out of reach. Then the contest begins. One morning, tracks circle the tree. The wolverine senses something is wrong, pacing back and forth, thinking. The next morning, the tracks cease, right beneath the bait. The animal stood there for a long time. The snow compressed where its body waited. Perhaps just a sniff, if only it could reach. But it cannot. So it waits, thinks. So does the trapper. He grins. He just has to remain patient. The wolverine might grow bolder, returning repeatedly, drawing closer and closer. And perhaps the man's hand might twitch prematurely. Perhaps he'll try his luck too soon. But if he waits, truly waits, then one night, hunger triumphs, and curiosity too. And it is curiosity that ultimately proves the genius's undoing. The wolverine leaps, claws flash, and in that instant, the trap springs, flame, smoke, a crack that tears through the trees. The creature's body goes limp. The man holds his ground. He is alone out here, and of all the beasts that menace a trapper's camp, the wolverine is the worst. It does not surrender. It is worse than any bear, any wolf. Still, for those who feel more for the animal than the man, understand this. Most of the time, the wolverine prevails. And in the end, if a trapper had a coat of arms, like the knights of old, it would be simple. A canoe, a snowshoe, a musket, a beaver, a buffalo. No lions, no dragons, just the emblem of a man who walked into hell, did not falter, and emerged standing.